Greetings, mortals, and welcome. Please present your tickets for validation. Thank you. Your existence has been acknowledged, and you have been granted access every Thursday and Friday. You will be accompanying your guides, Krista and Brandy, along with a world-renowned guest. They will be exploring an intriguing tendril of what humans refer to as reality each week, as they strive to advance you further down the path to the truths of your physical earth and what lies on the other side. Remember to please keep your hands and feet in the vehicle at all times, and do not exit until the craft has come to a complete stop.
Welcome. Hello.
Hey, everybody. Happy Thursday.
Happy Thursday. Woo! One day closer to the weekend.
Woo! Yes. And tomorrow after I leave of work, I am going straight to Fouke, Arkansas for the Bigfoot conference there in Fouke, Arkansas. So if you're out there, I'll be there.
Yes, you will be. Very cool. Very cool. And I'm not going.
Krista's got to stay back this weekend. She's got some birthdays and other things she's got to attend to.
Yeah.
So I will be the only one there. Well, I'll be with Tex, but you know.
Yeah. And Tex and Jason, I believe, right?
Yes, Tex and Jason will be with us. Yes.
Yeah, cool. So it ought to be fun. I'm sad I'm missing it.
I think it's going to be good. And I'm going to try to meet up with William Lunsford. He's going to be at Monster Mart all day on Saturday. And I'm hoping to at least get to stop in and say hello.
Yeah, he is actually one of our favorite people. We adore him. So
Yeah.
he is awesome. Real quick, let's talk about this, Brandy.
Oh, absolutely. This is our event being held next month. We are closing in next month. On May 18th, we will be having a conference / ghost hunt / dinner all in one. This will be at Ashmore Estates in Ashmore, Illinois. Illinois. I got to say that right. Illinois. I'm used to these people over here. Illinois. Okay. So the best part is in the afternoon, we're going to have a few speakers, then we're going to feed you dinner, and then we're going to ghost hunt to the wee early morning of the 19th. It's going to be a great event. We have our friend Paul Anthony from Paranormal Among Us. He's going to be there. Letitia Nunnelly and Barton Nunnelly. Barton has now confirmed that he will be coming. This ought to be real fun. This is going to be cryptid meet paranormal type of deal. We also have Jessica Potter. The Mermaid Medium is going to be there with Rachel Marie, who is a fantastic investigator and a psychic medium herself. And she's going to be there. And Josh Hurd, from the owner from Malvern Manor, will be speaking. Robin Terry will be speaking. After Dark Paranormal is helping us put this on, and that would mean that Terry Mosby will be there. Maybe we can get her to talk about some aliens for a little while. And I mean, this is just going to be great. So if you want tickets to go,
we're hoping actually that it won't be cloudy that night, and then we can do a little bit out in the skies, looking at.
Oh, I know. So we can do a little bit of sky watching. That's always fun too. You know, just to take a break. That's always fun to sky watch. But Terry Mosby, one of our friends here at Blondes and Booze, and she's going to be there, and she's a fantastic lady. If you've ever seen her on our show, she's been on several times. Again, she's with After Dark Paranormal. So go to Eventbrite to Blondes and Booze. It should be the first event that pops up for the year.
Yep. And then one more event we're going to talk about. That one.
All right. This is like a month and a half. Oh my goodness. These are all creeping up on me. Right. This is the Alabama Bigfoot Conference being held in Anniston, Alabama at the Anniston Performing Arts Center. This is on June 8th is the conference. We have great speakers such as, of course, Bigfoot Michigan Rob, Martin Groves, Greg Ogles, Jason McLean, us, the Blondes and Booze, Daryl Denton, Barton Nunnelly, and our MC for the day, Tex Wesson. The tickets, of course, are $30 online right now, $35 at the door. I just want to let you know that on the 7th, we had a meet and greet dinner. The meet and greet dinner, all the seats are reserved in the room that we had, but that doesn't mean you can't come in. Just go and have your dinner. And then if you want to come in and mingle with us, you're more than welcome. We won't turn anyone away.
That's it.
Who's hosting the conference? Whose conference is this?
It is
Anita Collier.
Yes.
Okay.
Anita
Is she
Collier.
going to let me come in for free or do I got to pay?
You can come in for free. Yes, you're our honorary blonde. We have.
Oh, okay, cool. I was getting ready to throw this at somebody.
You're a blonde, Josh. Now, so
I probably will not be able to make it
We'll
this
fight
summer.
for you.
Got some big contracts coming up, and I have a lot of work to do because we are about to lose our biggest contract, which is a huge financial blow to us. It's going to be a huge financial blow, which we're trying to prepare for.
Right.
So what we're doing is we're scaling it down. The guys are they're no longer gonna be able to take turkey and ham for lunch. They're gonna have to take bologna. That's how bad.
I thought you were going to say peanut butter and jelly.
or
Oh, no,
hot
we
dog.
can't eat. Peanut butter is too expensive right now. I saw somebody at Costco the other day with big cases of it, and I was like, "How much is that?" And she's like, "Well, they're only $6 a piece." I was like, "What? For a jar of what?"
Yeah.
You know, when I was a kid, my grandparents would not my grandparents, but my aunt and uncle got commodities. I don't know if people remember those.
Mhm.
And they were like for people who were not well off, you know, and they would get like the peanut butter or whatever, and they had like the fake, like not fake, but it was like the white label, whatever.
Yeah.
And I remember eating, you know, when I would go over there, we didn't get it. My parents didn't qualify for that, but my aunt and uncle did, and they always had that stuff, and it was commodities. They gave you cheese, butter, and peanut butter. Because those were not hard things to get. They make it out like it's super expensive stuff. It's really not.
Yeah.
It's just worth what you'll pay for it.
Right,
You know what I mean?
Right. Right. Absolutely.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
We went to a restaurant last night. Really good food. In the menu, though, it was only like 6 or 7 items. And usually when you go to a restaurant, you're like, we heard it was good. And so it was an Italian place. And I'm not even going to say the name because I don't want to say anything negative. You know, the wait staff and the owner were nice, but the menu was small. And usually that means that what they do very well, but not in this case. It was overpriced, not very good, and the portions were tiny. Like I mean, like they had this big plate with this little hole in the middle, like you know, and there was like this little bit of stuff. And the bread was super. It was an amazing bread, but I'm not going there to eat up a bunch of bread. I mean, I'm going there to eat a dish and.
Well,
the salad, they wanted $13 for a salad.
Yeah, no. And
I
here's
was-
the thing, too. You know, you just said you went to a pasta place. Well, pasta's cheap.
Very
you know
cheap.
what I'm saying? So they should have loaded that stuff on your plate. You know?
They should like if you go to like this, there's a chain called Buca de Beppo. I don't know if you guys know. Buca is like it's found all over the place, but you go there and they give you like this family-sized portion. So, I mean, that's the incentive to go back, right? Because you're like, hey, you know, I'm going to go back and I'm going to get this huge portion or whatever. And after the stuff that everybody had to wear the mask for, after that, the portions got really like we went in there one day and I was like, whoa, what happened? Like, you know, are they trying to tell me I need to go on a diet or what? But they were so teeny tiny. And I was like, not compared to what it was.
Right.
And the prices had gone way up, you know, and they were like, well, it's the cost of doing business. But I think a lot of people just took advantage and just said, you know what, we're going to rip people off. I don't think Buca did that because it looked like they were having trouble with the wait staff. But I've seen it a lot. I've gone places and it was just like, what is this? Why are we doing, you know?
Gotcha. Totally understand.
Yeah.
Well, we have.
I had to probably handed my plate back and say, give me some food.
Exactly.
Well, we have Christopher Garetano tonight. So I am going to not waste any more time and I am going to bring him up. Hello.
Hello.
Thanks for having me tonight.
Christopher, we were just complaining about your people and how they're ripping people off with the pasta. You need to have a talk with them. Let them know that I'm not happy with this. This is you're in charge of all the Italian restaurants. You tell them what's happening here.
I have.
You tell them we want a plate full.
You need to be our voice.
Yeah, Italian, a whole bunch of things.
I don't know. We were speaking with Christopher for probably about, 5 minutes before the show started. And we'd already had too many questions. We're like, just hold it right there. Just don't say any more.
Oh,
Just
no worries.
wait. And we'd already had too many questions. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
So anyway, go ahead, Krista.
Thank you and welcome for coming.
Oh, thank you.
Welcome
to be here.
I've been looking forward to this, and I watched your episode when you were on with Bettina Moss. I was in chat.
Yeah, that was interesting.
Yeah.
I don't think I was observing the chat room at the time, and I know there was some kind of commotion going on. No.
Yeah.
Overall, though, you did a great job, and that's why I was Josh had said that he could possibly get you, ask you to come on our show. So we definitely
anytime. Yeah, I'm happy to come on and share stories and hang out.
So let's. How did you get into this weirdness? Because I know you're an author. You make movies.
Yeah,
all kinds of things.
I was a kid, just immersed. I was born in '76, so the early '80s and throughout the '80s were just this dynamo of all kinds of fiction, cinema, books, music, all at once from a variety of generations. I was watching everything from my grandparents' stuff to the stuff that was coming out currently at the time, which, I was watching old Universal horror films alongside what my parents were watching, what my parents watched when they were, going to the drive-in as teenagers, Night of the Living Dead. And there was no restrictions. My parents had a video store when I was a kid, and they loved movies. So when they went to the drive-in, they'd throw us kids in the station wagon, and we'd go up on top with a sleeping bag, and we'd be there. And movies were just my whole life when I was a kid. And so I experienced anything in relation to hauntings and the paranormal through fiction first. It was always fiction. And the borderline of that were movies like the Amityville Horror, which, of course, that tagline on every movie like that, based on a true story. And that house was only 15 minutes from my house. So, yeah. And so, this new thing I'm making, A Haunting We Will Go, I'm finishing it right now. It is this story. It's this story that I feel like a lot of you can relate, or a lot of us, like, we all grow up with these things. Yeah. And even current generations, you have all this generations of fiction and ghost stories and paranormal stories. And I feel like, in the first quarter of the film, that's what I'm reminding you of, all that nostalgia. And then it wasn't until my mother's cousin was killed in a horrible car accident that I had the first familial ghost story, the first ghost story in my home. And this is well before I actually experienced anything she did. And she tells that story in A Haunting We Will Go. It's actually the first interview you see in the movie. And that's what got me into this. It's all this fiction. I mean, I'm surrounded by it to this moment. I feel like there's this wonderful magic that comes from it, especially when you're creating or you want to be inspired. And I was scared, but super attracted to it when I was a kid. And then I had my own first paranormal experience. So it's experience. It's fiction and experience. All of those years, those formative years, really made me dive into this. And I'm sure we have similar tales. Some people later in life got into this stuff, but I've been into it since birth. It's right. Just, it feels like it has a comforting feeling. And at the same time, I'm trying to think what truly ended up scaring me in my adult life was stuff like the Montauk Project, because that is now what's supposed to be the government, what's supposed to be looking after us, is the most vile and corrupt entity that you could imagine. And if stories like that are proven to be true, that's what scares me, to tell you the truth.
Yeah, absolutely.
Are you saying that we can't trust them?
100% we can.
Oh my God.
and that's proven by other things. We could talk about that too, but
that's where you get that scene where it's like dun dun dun. Whoa.
Yeah. Unfortunately. But there's the other side of it, and we can't dwell on the negative, is that I do believe there are good guys behind the scenes that also feel this way, that are capable of dismantling what's happened. And I want to believe that. So I believe that every day, and that's, you have to have hope in that.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. So when you
Well, let's talk about, okay, so we started talking and we were talking, there I go, I froze again. I know I did.
Oh,
We were talking about your paranormal experiences, and we asked you, you were showing us things behind you and that they're supposed to be haunted, and we asked you about if it was haunted. You said, no, not really, not in that house, but you were telling us about your other house. Tell us
It's got a
about
haunted
your
monkey,
other
though.
house.
yes, but I did forget about one thing. So this monkey,
He's
okay,
got a haunted monkey, yeah.
I'm telling you right now, I wouldn't make these things up. I'm the last guy that would. All right, so this monkey's supposed to be haunted. He has a story behind him. He's an antique, children's toy. He still works. And
where did he come from?
these Etsy people sell all this stuff. I have a mask in my hallway that allegedly is haunted too, and it's this tribal wooden mask. It has a snake coming out of its pineal gland, fangs, really creepy stuff. And I actually cut myself on it the first day. So, I have some weird items here, that one Ouija board from Ukraine, but I forgot to tell you this story. I totally forgot about this. Something did happen in this house. So he's always pointed towards the back windows here. And one night, and I'm telling you right now, I'm looking at him and he's facing the back windows that actually face the front of the house.
Mm-hmm.
And this is my office. And I'm here working like I usually do on this. I have a pretty big desk. It's got a couple computers on it and everything. And I turn, and now he's facing me. And I'm like, oh boy. And I don't have to make stuff like this up. I mean, like, he really turned around. Now I don't know how. I can't say how. And I'd like to, just like any parapsychologist, psychiatrist, which I'm not, would try to come up with a million ways on how that thing turned around on its own.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it turned on when I had my mixing headphones on and I didn't hear it, and that somehow the movement made it turn. That's a possibility. But the fact that the owners had claimed, or the previous owners claimed, he's haunted makes me think about it. And I do believe items can have an impression on them, as you probably have looked into a million times. And I think, going back to the Amityville Horror for a second, there were a lot of money disputes after the movie came out, and after the book, Jay Anson's book came out, it was turned into a movie, and the lawyers got messed around on money allegedly, but the Lutzes took that story to their grave. And I've always believed that that house was haunted, and that during that 28 days that they stayed there, they experienced something previous to them. Ron DeFeo killed his entire family in that house. The one thing that retained outside of the structure of the house were the bed frames. George Lutz kept all the bed frames of every family member that were murdered by Ron DeFeo. And so the Lutz family claims they had this extraordinary experience at the house, and they were driven out by the energy that was there. And I think the violence of that moment somehow maybe retained into the bed frames, and that's why they were having the experience they did, because after the Lutzes moved out, all of the furniture was taken out of the house. And that's my theory on, and I brought it up to Barry Taft, the great parapsychologist, and he felt there was something to that, but he wouldn't tell me if he could confirm it unless he did an investigation. And we don't know where these bed frames are. They've disappeared, I'm sure.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and so knowing all of this, Christopher calls me one day and he's like, hey, the Amityville Horror House is up for sale. I think it would be a good idea to buy it and turn it into an amusement park.
Yeah. Well, an attraction, private attraction. Hey, we'll make it happen.
He didn't put it in those words, but that was what he was saying. Yeah.
But it's possible because it always goes up for sale, and probably because the traffic that comes through the neighborhood. So imagine if we will down the road, we all go in on this house, we buy it, and we hire a security booth for the street, Ocean Avenue, it's called. And 112 Ocean Avenue is the house itself. And, you charge for private stayovers and private investigations, and by appointment only.
Yeah.
And, the rest is up to how you handle it. But I would love to. I've never been in the house. I've been on the property. When I was a teenager, we would sneak onto the property and bring Ouija boards and stuff. And I remember one guy seeing him through the window, one of the owners, he just looked out and he's just like trying to watch TV and he's shaking his head and he sees these kids on his lawn. So in recent years, they built a fence that keeps everybody off the lawn. But that house is going to continue to go up for sale because it's one of the most infamous haunted houses in the world,
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, the Conjuring house did it. Well, I mean, that house that you can rent that house. I've been in that house. I've stayed in that house. I don't see why you couldn't do it.
Did you experience anything there at all?
Yeah.
Bad nightmares or oh, you did? Okay. Wow.
Yeah, I experienced things, but nothing bad.
No, nothing bad. What's interesting to me is like it depends on your reaction to it. I've had people call me up after they saw an apparition crying because it was such a profound experience. That's why sometimes you see these conveyor belt ghost shows on television and they're not having that life-changing experience that we all have when we actually experience, when you see an apparition or you hear something. And I've had both of those experiences, but only a handful of times in my life. The monkey could have turned around for some other reason, but I did see an apparition once, and I heard something for 2 nights in a row when I was 14, and
wow,
you can't tell me it was anything else but something otherworldly for sure. And I can tell that story if you want me to.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
Before you do that, somebody had said something about the Conjuring house not being the same. I would say that there are certain places that, like they say, well, nothing's really happening or whatever. And it depends on the people and the energy and what you bring to the table. Because I think some people are like, there's people that get bit by mosquitoes and others people that don't. I mean, it's the truth. It's all upon your physiology. And I think that if you were to be as sensitive, you would have a very hard time in any of these places. There's a lot of really scary places I've been in. Like, I mean, I sat at the bar at the Menger Hotel for like 2 hours and drank a beer with Ken Gerhardt, and we didn't see any spooky ghosts, but the wait staff was telling us about stuff that happened.
Sure.
I mean, I think it just depends.
And this is the thing, like guys like Barry Taff, who used to run the parapsychology unit at UCLA, and he wrote a book called Aliens Above, Ghosts Below. And his whole thing was that, what he found over time was in a lot of poltergeist cases, there was a kid around the age of, I guess, from the age of 6 to 12 years old, always common denominator in all of those cases. So it also could have been geomagnetic energy at the location as well. And that's why this was invented, this device here, the God helmet, and something called the Haunt Box by Michael Persinger were invented because they wanted to replicate a situation scientifically. They wanted to, because perhaps it's these geomagnetic fields that are causing, or at least opening the doorway for us to see these things. He didn't believe it was causing a hallucination. He didn't rule that out either, but the heavy geomagnetic or electromagnetic fields might inspire these hauntings, coupled with what Josh was just saying, that maybe there are people with a particular chemistry coupled with that geomagnetic or electromagnetic field, that's why some of us see these things or hear these things and some of us don't, or we only have them at certain times in our lives. And perhaps the devices can always pick up some kind of spike, but the events, I think the true events are few and far between where you actually see something. I saw an apparition once.
Have you used your God's helmet?
Oh yeah. I made a show called Strange World for Discovery and Travel Channel. It was an 8-hour series, and that was the first time that I experimented with it. And ever since then, and I've always had vivid dreams since I was a kid, but ever since then, I have had extremely vivid dreams. And it was 3 sessions I had with the God helmet, one that actually was on the show itself.
Wow. So we have a friend too that he also makes them. It's Katie Stafford. I don't know if you're familiar with him or not, but he Brandy actually I know has used that one, and she had some crazy things happen with
Sure did. Sure
Sure.
did.
Did you hear things? You heard things that maybe weren't there? I had that experience with it. It was like you were hearing different.
It was more like I was sitting in a room and they had a camera on me, watching me, and they were down in another room and they were watching me while this was going on, and you could hear things moving around in the room and it wasn't me. And while they were hearing that, I didn't hear it, but they did. And then I was seeing like shadows, like they were just running across, and then they'd stop in front of me and then they'd move on, and then they'd come back and look at me and move on. And that went on. I think it went on for about 15, 18 minutes. And then I was like, I'm done with this. I got to get out of this thing, because after a while, it's just like I can't stay in it.
Sure.
So, but yeah, I mean, it really heightened my senses to where I could see these things a lot easier. But the weird thing is they were hearing things moving around in there that I couldn't hear.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Again, a person had passed away, but it was that heavy amount of electromagnetic energy that would affect the temporal lobe of the brain. And then it would, I think, much like in fiction stories like H.P. Lovecraft's From Beyond, that we were able to now see things that are probably always there. Like, one of Barry Taft's investigations way back, there was some message that they got. I don't know. I think it was from an EVP that it said phantoms fill the skies around us. They're everywhere, that we're kind of coinciding with all of this, and that perhaps it's some kind of perception, a break in perception that allows us to see it. And maybe Persinger was exploring that. Of course, he couldn't have that on the collegiate record because he needs to get the grant to continue the scientific research. So he has to say, well, I'm just trying to rule out hallucinations. Obviously, credible people throughout human history have seen apparitions, have heard things, and have seen ghosts, essentially. And so you can't say, well, ghosts aren't real. Of course they are. So many people, millions and millions of witnesses throughout history. So in any court of law, that would stand in court for any particular case. If you had millions of witnesses, it's closed. It's a closed case. It's done deal. So ghosts are real, 100%. We just don't know exactly what they are. Are they a combination of things? Are they just the discorporated spirits, of discorporated humans? I don't know. I think there's a variety, a large variety of things we're experiencing. And I know this is your constant exploration, but, from my own experience and observation, I feel like, and I'm not a scientist, but I try to approach it with a level head most of the time.
I like that comment. I wanted to read a couple of them. Chris Phoenix says, humans are so limited on the light spectrum and the sound spectrum. There could be all kinds of things going on around us and we can't see and hear it. That's the scary thing.
Sure.
Chris, you and I have had some really interesting conversations. Kate Webster, this is an interesting conversation. She says here, I was given a really lovely handbag that belonged to in-law's granny. I swear it's a bag of curiosities. Things disappear from there and appear in there. I found a pendulum for divination in there. That's interesting because I was on your show. We did Off to the Witch, and I was on there twice, and one of them was just about the key. It's a haunted object that belongs to, I guess, my family now. I mean,
you were talking about your haunted armoire, right?
Yeah. Oh, that too. But the key is what disappears and reappears, and I don't know how or why. I have a theory behind it because it was inside of a gargoyle that came from Guatemala, and I did something really stupid, and I had it shipped back, and it didn't show up until like 2 years later. Or 3 years later, something like that. It was just like it shoved at my doorstep, and I've told Chris about it. And there was a key. I didn't know there was a key in there until about a year and a half, 2 years later, when my brother got drunk and clumsily knocked it off the deal. And when I picked it up, it was rattling around. I'm like, "What is that? I think you broke it or something." And he was like, "Well, good. The thing's ugly anyway." And I'm like, "Whatever." And so we had a weird incident where this thing was sitting. It was the same exact size as an angel statue, and I had them sitting about 6 foot apart. And we heard clank, clank, and we were playing video games, and I was in my 20s, whatever. But anyway, I walk into the room, and the angel, kind of at an angle, its head was decapitated and was laying on the ground.
Gosh.
And so I always thought that was weird. So I kind of looked at that statue, and I was like, "Did you do that?"
I have some decapitated statues, but my squirrel does that, so I had to move a lot of them.
Yeah, the squirrel. But it was weird that, so we talked about that on there, but that's interesting that Kate said that she's got something that appears and
Yeah.
reappears. That I can relate to that. That's a weird thing. And
Well,
right
you
now
know,
we don't know
it
where
should-
the key is at.
Well,
sorry,
to
Brandon.
me, the thing is to have a handbag. I'd look at it. Oh, look, I got $1 billion. Forget it.
You get a winning
Just
lottery
forget
ticket in there. That'd be nice.
Yeah, it's like,
Who
okay,
wouldn't
forget
want
it. It's
that,
gone.
right?
You know, that'd be me. You know,
Yeah.
that would just drive me
Garetano-
nuts. Though, trying to find everything.
Garetano, when you came to the conference, we should have had you bring the God helmet and let people take little 20-minute power naps in that area by the corner where Christopher Jordan was interviewing people.
Yeah.
It's like, just ignore them. They're going to take a nap, and it's going to profoundly change the way they sleep.
There's a lot of preparation for it, unfortunately, and it's complicated, especially the operation of it through even a laptop and the program itself. I wish it was as easy as hitting a button. I'm sure they can design one that might get there. And I did a variety of those experiments for Strange World. I had another one where it would enhance your intelligence. They were working on this. This was a government project. And then I would start shooting a gun towards a target to see if I was more focused after. And it was, it would enhance your ability. But whatever they're showing us is, for them, is much more advanced, of course, much more. And they've probably had it for years, and who knows what's happening. But through my research, they're literally designing X-Men. I mean, it's like Dr. Moreau and X-Men mixed. I mean, all fiction seems to be true. That's why I look back at a century's worth of fiction and I start to think that either they were prophets and they were channeling these ideas, or this stuff was put out there on purpose. So many things have come to fruition. I mean,
right, absolutely. Betsy Barnacle, she asked, Christopher, please perverse in telling your experience seeing an apparition, please.
Okay. Well, so it started with my mother actually experiencing one when I was a kid. Cousin Cindy had died in a car accident, unfortunately, and my mother had inherited one of her blouses. And she was trying it on a winter day in her bedroom, and all the windows in the house were shut, and her door slammed, and the room was freezing cold, and she was scared. And she got rid of the blouse after, and the night before, she said that someone or something was poking on her leg and woke her up. So maybe it was Cindy coming to visit. And I said, well, if it was Cindy coming to visit, then why were you scared? She's like, I just was. And I didn't want to see her again that way. I think a lot of it is because of the ghost stories we grow up with in the fiction, is that it puts an air of fear in you. When I actually saw one, well, first I have to tell you, I heard one when I was 14, and it was indisputable. It was 100% something otherworldly after many years of trying to figure out what this may have been. I was staying at a friend's house, 14 years old. We were hanging out doing normal things, listening to music and watching movies, and everybody was asleep. There were, I think, 3 or 4 guys in the room, including myself, sleeping on the floor, sleeping on bunk beds. And I fell asleep. We were listening to music, and the music ended, and I was fast asleep, and he had these green glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling. And I opened my eyes, and that's all I could see. But I was awakened to a whispering, a very loud whispering. And it sounded like it was being articulated by a female voice, but I could not make out the words at all. And it was loud. It was loud enough to awaken me. And at first, immediately, as you do when you experience something like this, your body and all of your available senses are telling you that this is something else. This is not normal. However, I was trying to figure out what it was. And first I yelled out into the room and I said, hey guys, stop. Who's doing that? And I shoved my friend on his bed, and he said, go back to sleep. No one's doing anything. And so I get up and I walk out of the room, and it's louder in the hallway even. It's even louder. And it's just this almost gibberish, but it was in the cadence of a sentence. A human voice box was doing this, but it was whispering. I could not make out one word. And I walked through the entire house. This guy, Dave, he'd lived with his mother and his sister. And I mean, I walked by his sister's room hoping I would find her whispering on the phone. Maybe I couldn't. Maybe it was just loud for some reason. I was half asleep. She was asleep. I walked downstairs to where his mother was sleeping and peeked into her bedroom. She was asleep. I searched around to see if there was a radio on and some, who knows, some weird station. It was coming in and out of a station, nothing. And I was scared. I was really scared because I was like, this is something else. And at that moment, understand, like probably a lot of us at 14, I had a head full of horror films and ghost stories. I loved stuff, but I was not enjoying this moment at all. I was scared, I don't know. I knew it was something else. So I laid down and I was falling asleep and I was listening to this thing. Eventually I did fall asleep, probably, an hour before sunrise. And I woke up and obviously there was no whispering. Went back to my parents' house where I lived and nothing during the day. Didn't hear any whispering, didn't hear anything. But whatever this was somehow attached itself to me. And I heard it again at my parents' house around the same time. It's probably around 2 or 3 in the morning. And I heard it again, same thing. And at that point I was frustrated. I was like, what is this? Whatever this is, I just want it to go away. And same kind of thing happened. I stayed up all night listening to it and I never heard it again. I heard it 2 nights in a row, 2 different locations, never heard it before, never heard it again. And so between that time and that time I actually saw an apparition, I don't believe, well, I had some experiences I could get into, nothing around with magic and things like that. There were some odd occurrences and a dark period because of it, I think. And, but I never saw anything and I never heard anything. It was more an attitude change. It was more an overall atmosphere around me when I was kind of into that stuff. But I lived in Michigan. I lived in New York until I was in my late 30s. And then I moved to Michigan, got an apartment with my girlfriend at the time. And she was sleeping in the bedroom. There was a long hallway. We had a 4th floor apartment. That was the top floor of the building. And it was on Lake Michigan. And she was in the bedroom sleeping. The door was shut. I had my office in the middle of the hallway and then the living room at the back. I'm in the living room on the phone talking. And then out of my periphery, and just like now, I could see the wall. I could see this shelf over here that's shaped like a coffin with Sherlock Holmes on top of it and all this other stuff I have. And I can still look at this and see you at the same time. So I saw what looked like a woman, not exactly like my girlfriend, but similar. Like she had dark hair, pale skin, she was wearing a white nightgown that I never saw her in, walk down the hall out of the shadows into my office. There was a blizzard outside. The windows were shut. And I did not take my eyes off because I thought it was odd that she's just walking through the hallway in this weird nightgown going into my office. And as soon as I got off the phone, I walked into the office and nobody was there. And the snow was catching up at the windows outside and it was a lot of wind and nobody was in the room. Nobody jumped out a window. And then immediately I walked into the bedroom and woke her up. And I said, did you just walk into my office? And she said, no, I've been sleeping the whole time. And clearly she was.
It was a doppelganger, obviously,
Right. Now that's an interesting thing because the inverse of that happened to her. So months later, she was in the living room and I was watching it. She didn't like horror films. So I was watching a horror film in the bedroom and she stayed in the living room and had fallen asleep watching TV. And she came rushing into the bedroom and said, did you just shake me and tell me to come to bed? And I'm like, no, I've been here the whole time. And so the same thing happened, but there was a lot of weird stuff happening out there, some of which I won't bring up because it's attached to some personal stuff, I guess, on her end. But there was a situation where well, I'm not saying her name. There was a bit of a cultish situation out there that she
Gotcha.
was integrated in, and I think that may have affected us. So
Mhm.
possibility.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow, that's crazy. So, can we go back and you said you have that Ouija board?
Right. You want me to get it?
Yeah, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm out. I'll see you guys next Thursday. All right. I'm out.
Like, I'm out of here.
Use
Don't
it.
If you start
take a
playing with
5-minute
it,
break.
Chris, I'm serious, man. I'm ducking, bro.
Yeah, no, we don't use them.
I don't play around with those things, man. I just don't, man. I mean, I don't condemn people.
No, we don't play with them either. We just.
I just tell you, it's a very dangerous thing. I have had so many
It's not.
stories.
It's not a toy. Honestly, it's not a toy. We don't play with it. Honestly,
Preface: I don't use it. Never have. Did when I was a kid use Ouija boards, but I don't do it now. So this is interesting. It's from Ukraine, and it's not ancient, but it's interesting.
Okay.
And and here's the planchette for it. I keep it in here because my squirrel was like, "Oh, this looks nice. I want to eat this."
Oh wow.
Yeah. So
wow, that's
You
beautiful.
and Lyle Blackburn, dude, y'all both have like monster rooms. Like Lyle has like an epic monster room, dude.
I got
Have you ever
cool
been to his
stuff
house?
everywhere. I got a Marie Laveau. I got the statues of everything. I have to keep the statues in here though. So.
Wow.
And the creature from the Black Lagoon.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you and Lyle are both like the creature from the Black Lagoon people. See, look, y'all, both of y'all with that used to be my favorite monster as a kid too.
One of them, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I got, what do I have? I have gremlins everywhere. I have Creepshow. Medusa lost her head because Lucky decided she was going to behead Medusa. I guess she wanted to be Perseus. But
Wow. And you really, with all of that crazy things that you have, you don't have much activity in your house.
So my frame of mind at this point, I think I'm prepared for it, that I'm safe to have these things, that I see myself as an explorer or like an earthly astronaut, just exploring all this stuff. I have a very level head now. You know, when I was a kid, I think I took this stuff to heart. You know, I would look into black magic books. Oh, this is cool. I mean, because kids are attracted to that. Yeah. And I would try certain things, but I didn't know what I was doing. And I think I was in a bit of a dark period as a kid. And my buddy, who had later unfortunately passed away of a drug overdose, he was getting himself clean, and he saw me with one of these books. I mean, I was young, and he's like, "What are you doing with that, man?" And I'm like, "I don't know. It's cool, no?" And he's like, "No, it's not." He's like, "I want you to meet me. I'm going to come and pick you up, and then we're going to go somewhere." And so he took me to this place where these really tough dudes were. It was in this house, and then they had this place where it was all set up, and they were, burning sage and doing all this stuff. But it was all these kind of tough ex-drug addict guys that were trying to find a place of peace, and they were finding it through an earthly magic, like a Wiccan type situation. And he wanted me to get away from the darker stuff. And I did. Since that day, I had never messed with anything like that. I was a young kid. And that was around the time I had heard the ghost as well. So, I don't recommend anybody messing with spells, messing with black magic, anything like that, even Ouija boards. But I think, once again, I feel like I've lived such a long stretch with all this stuff that I think, and especially after adventures I went on for the TV shows, that I feel like I can keep these things around as an explorer, and they won't affect me, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, I got you.
I think a lot of it is your energy too. I have a lot of weird objects in my house. One of them being an Egyptian death mask. I've had it for a long time, and I got it years and years ago. Not even going to get into how. I got it back when I was like, I think 26 or something like that. And I've had it ever since, or maybe even, I think it was 24. But I thought it was cool, and somebody had it, and we traded. And I put it up on my wall, but I had so much weird stuff. I had a sword from the Philippines, one of those, they're called the Chris. And I had all these different types. I had a Gurkha that was used. I had an Australian dagger that was used in war during World War II. And
it depends on how you react to the energy. I guess it depends on how sensitive you are to it. what suggestion it gives you when you have it. There are some items I won't take. Like Josh had seen me for the first time on my show. He was sitting up late at night, and the very episode that it was called Demon Time, and there was this gentleman who had a mirror. He claimed that he gazed into, and these spirits would come out in the middle of the night and speak to him. And he wanted to give me the mirror before I was ready to go home. He's like, "No, I want you to have this." I'm like, "Dude, I'm not taking this." So there's some items I would reject for sure, because I believe what I listened to was 100% authentic, and you can hear some of it in the episode. If you find the Strange World YouTube channel, they're all on there. Those episodes, you can just see them for free. And his name was Mike. He had recorded himself while he was sleeping, and these weren't even EVPs. These were sound recordings while he was asleep. That I was hearing the chattering and a chit chat. It was like that old horror film. Are you alone in the dark, or are you afraid of the dark?
Right.
Where the little creatures were talking to each other.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it was. Mm-hmm. Usually when someone fakes this, I can hear like the guy who's presenting it to me, his voice in there, his inflection, but this didn't sound like him, and it didn't sound like anything he made up, and it was so weird and creepy. And he wanted to give me this mirror, and I'm like, I'm not taking this. I'm not taking this home with me. I like some weird items. Like I have a weird voodoo doll over here and a few other things. Somebody wanted to give me a human skull once. I said, not a chance. I have a replica, It's fake. I wouldn't take. I have a monkey's paw. I always wondered if that's not real. This is just a replica.
Gotcha.
But I wouldn't take a real human skull. I think that's asking for trouble. I know a guy who was very cavalier about having a human skull in his office. Not only that, I think he would disrespect it. And he even told me this. So one day he's got the skull, and these moths just start coming out of it. Then he starts getting all this bad luck, but he wouldn't admit that the bad luck is coming from the skull. I think he was in a car accident, all this other stuff. And then he told me one day, I got rid of the skull, man. And I'm like, yeah, maybe you shouldn't have disrespected someone's remains.
Right. Well, and I think a lot of this too, like, you having all those items, Josh having some items, it's about your intention too. What you what you do with it. If you're not using that board, as you said,
Not at all.
No intention there, no ill will or anything like that. So, yeah.
The people that lived in the house before we did, the guy in my study, there was a weird energy, and we had to cleanse it. And he had 3 skulls, and one of them was decorated with a snake on top of it. And I couldn't tell whether they were real or not. And I was looking at them, and I was like, and he came in there real quick and he had all these pins with like snakes and on them and stuff. And knowing what I know, that there was a lot of symbolism there, like the Temple of Set, which I don't know if and I'm not going to say this because I don't know if he knew that or if he did know that. I just saw it there, and I was like, okay. So you can tell the energy that comes off of certain objects that you have. I know what they are. I know what they do and what they're capable of. And I have a really, really old painting that's really creepy that I believe has changed. I don't even put it up anymore. The spirits in my old house, and I say this with all honesty, they would throw it down onto the ground like they didn't like it. So it didn't mesh with whatever they were doing. And then there was a Frazetta picture of the werewolf meets the vampire. And that one was getting thrown off the wall all the time, too.
You mean this?
There, I had that one right there, yeah. I had that one, but I also had the one where Dracula's kind of like with his cape and the werewolf's like this, and he's like...
That's in the other room.
Yeah. And that one, Chief came on the show. He's a half Native American guy. Was my roommate at one time, lived there, and he goes, dude, that picture keeps flying off the wall. So he handed it to me and said, just take it and do something with it. And I told him, I just tried to downplay it. I said, well, Yoda gets thrown around too, and he goes, no, that's your dogs. It's like, that picture gets thrown on the ground because it did not like that. It didn't like the werewolf imagery for whatever reason. But there was a lot of weird stuff. There was a mirror in there. But anyway, I digress. There's just a lot of stuff that, that goes along with this. And if you're going to have it, you can't disrespect it, and you have to be real careful with it because you can awaken things too.
Sure, I think you're the catalyst a lot of the time. Barry Taff wrote about that in his book. And I think he was approaching this as a scientist all his life. He's still alive. He's just, I don't think he's, I think he's retired at this point. But so it's complicated. So imagine, if you will, like I believed that all of these items here had a power enough to open up doorways. I think if I believe that enough, I might cause a problem. I might be the catalyst that opens the door. But I don't believe that. At least these items. I do believe if I had Mike's mirror in my house, we would have trouble.
Well, and two, I think you all just mentioned about what type of person too you are. Example, Tony Pickman is a really good friend of mine. He's the one that kind of made the Sally House famous with the TV show Sightings many years ago. But a lot of the TV shows come to him whenever they do investigations over there at the Sally House, because he only lives a few blocks from there. However, he had told me one time that Zach Bagans walked in his house, and Tony's got several crosses in his house. And as soon as he walked in the house, 2 of the crosses flew off the wall. It never happened before. So what does that tell you about Zach Bagans?
So Zach took his shirt off and tried to fight the crosses. He said, "You want a piece of me, bro? You want a piece of me?"
I just had to throw that out there because, to me, he has negative energy about him. My own personal opinion. I think he has negative energy. And then, that happened at his house, that just validated everything I thought about the man.
Yeah, man, it's because of all the demons he fights, man. He's right. Zachy, the demon slayer.
There you go.
Yeah. I mean, we have, obviously we know so many different ways we could present wonderful ghost stories, investigations. And I think in the forthcoming years, from all of us collectively, the world's going to see that stuff, because it's not just this one thing with a few idiots running around a house saying, what was that? What was that? It's cookie cutter stuff that we don't need, anymore.
No, they're just running around going, dude, bro.
That's finding nothing is another good one there. They're epic, Yeah. Let's give them donuts and telling one of my witnesses your kid can play down by the creek that you saw the Bigfoot at. It's not going to hurt it. It's like a giant squirrel, and you can give it food too. I was like, are you kidding me? Because one of my witnesses said that one of them told them that, and I was very upset about that. And I said, well, that's ridiculous. That's a ridiculous thing. And I cautioned her. I said, please don't let your grandchild play down there by the creek if they're seeing this creature. And she confirmed that she had seen it too. It wasn't a child's imagination. It was something up in Washington where there's a lot of those creatures. Real quick, Chris, when I first I don't know if I've told my audiences, but I don't know, Booze, if I've told you guys, or Blondes, I'm sorry, I called you Booze. The Booze, when I met Chris, I just messaged him and I said, hey, I just saw you on TV. I like your show. I was laying in bed with my wife and I was just like, dude, this guy's amazing. And I did not realize that you were not meant to be the front guy. You were just the one behind the scenes, but you went ahead and they had you.
In Strange World, I was. In the Dark Files, I was the producer and creator of the Dark Files, co-creator. They wanted to do History Channel wanted to do a sequel to my documentary, my independent documentary. And then when we were in the boardroom, they were like, oh, they want you to host too. And so after the Dark Files played, it rated well. And then Discovery was interested in doing something with me. And they had another presentation that was similar to the Dark Files. I said, I don't really want to do this, but give me like a month to show you what I want to do. And then we make something called a deck, which is like a catalog of what the season is going to be. And then I presented my deck for Strange World. It was called Strange World. It had the episodes I wanted to do. And some of them were elaborate. Like there was an island in New York, Esopus Island, where Aleister Crowley went to rewrite the Tao Te Ching, or something like that. And he was there for so many days by himself on this island and doing all this stuff. And so I wanted to go there and see if we could get any activity of this guy who had, he talk about bad energy. That guy had bad energy. And he was the real deal. He wasn't just some silly guy in a costume. There's some stories like for instance, when he went mountain climbing, and he really was a mountain climber, but he was a bastard, and he cut loose his whole team. These guys died, and he just scurried away like, see ya, you know. And then two guys confronted him on the street somewhere, and I think in Tangiers, he stabbed them. You know, he stabbed two guys. He was a bad dude. He was not a good person. And his tarot card deck, which again, I have like a collection of things here, has nothing but bad energy. I would never use it. You know, I would never use it to give a reading. I don't know why people practice his magic. He's got nothing but dark energy surrounding it. And I think in a way, he created those things to extend that to whoever was going to use it. He knew he was going to be an influence on your life, even after his death. So, yeah, I think existence is such a strange thing. And I guess the only way we're going to find out is maybe through experimentation, like the God helmet and stuff like that.
Which Chris tried to send to me. Chris is like, hey, I'm going to send, no, this is no lappy. It's true. Chris is like, hey, I'm going to send you the God helmet. And I was like,
with
why? He goes, I
instructions.
want you to put it on and go to sleep with it. And I'm like, for what? And he's like, so you can be effed up like me.
Yeah, I mean, you know, there were weird things we were going to do, and then I'll continue to do on my own in these new shows I'm making. But, you know, I was really into like Altered States, the book by Patty Chayefsky, but also the movie where William Hurt, he played this scientist who was experimenting with psychedelics, and he regressed into this Neanderthal in a deprivation tank. So they were like, second season, why don't we load you up with shrooms? We're going to put you in a deprivation tank and see what happens. They had all these experiments.
Well, you know, Chris, that guy that was going to give you the mirror, folks, you didn't see this mirror. Now, with Chris, I knew for years and years and years that house still had Christmas decorations up. Like they had just left and said, hey, you know what? We're going to leave everything in place. They left. And so that house was notoriously haunted. And I had been driving by there for a couple decades, and that thing had sat empty for probably by the time Chris showed up, at least 10 years it had been empty. And so it was dilapidated, probably dangerous. I think they're taking it apart now. But that area right there, there was a case that I covered with Linda Godfrey of a werewolf. And I'm talking about an actual werewolf, a thing that swam across the lake, a pest control guy and a security guard. And they watched this guy get out of the water and his hair fall off, and he turned into what looked like a long-haired, either Hispanic or more Native American-looking guy. And he just kind of looked at him, and he was just like a nude dude, and just walked into the woods, man. And then one night I went out there to show Nellie that house, you know, because Garetano had been on TV, and we the guy and the mirror. And he's like, I thought it was pretty, and I'm not making fun of the guy. I don't know the guy, but how can you look at that and think that looks pretty? Like that's an ugly mirror. It's not even pretty. And then we're out there riding around, and we hear wood knocks, me and Nellie.
Oh,
and we heard it three, you know, over and over again. And then for whatever reason, I've been out there 1,000 times. I got disoriented, and I was like driving around trying to get out of there. And I was like, kept turning the wrong way. And I had been out there a lot. And there was a party I was at one time where there's some condos down the road from there years ago where some woman started flipping out and saying that, you know, she was seeing things, and I don't know what she was on, but everybody was like, she's possessed, and there's all this weird stuff going on. People started leaving. Total buzzkill, you know. Obviously, somebody gets possessed, and you're just like, this is ridiculous, man. It was all in that one little area. So I wonder, you know, if there's something going on in that area, why there would be that house with the mirror that Chris, you know, dealt with. The girl that got possessed at the party, and then me and my wife hearing the wood knocks, and then the story of the werewolf, you know, that me and Linda covered. And then, you know, there's just all this weird stuff going on in that one little area. And so that house was really notoriously haunted. So when it caught my attention because you were there in Austin, well, outside of Austin.
So imagine using the God helmet in any of these highly charged or allegedly highly charged areas. It might have an even stronger effect. But who's done it? That's the thing. Like my first usage of the God helmet was in Los Angeles, and then when I believe I was in Seattle when I actually did the experiment. And but
did you build your God's helmet yourself?
No, that was Todd Murphy did that.
Gotcha. Okay.
And you can go to his website and anyone can order a God helmet from him, and get all the proper instructions from him. And I'm sure he's very communicative with everybody. You know, he'll tell you what you need to do. He told me not to have any caffeine, and I probably drank 7 cups of coffee that morning. I did misuse it on the second run. So maybe that's where some of the headaches came from. I don't know.
Could be. I don't know if anybody's ever watched The Ghost of Morgan City. On the last episode, I believe it was Jeremy Leonard, the Cajun demonologist. He put the God's helmet on, and he's seen like hundreds of these ghosts out in the middle of town there in Louisiana. So
it's amazing.
Interesting.
Yeah, I think, you know, we need more people like Persinger that are willing to experiment with that, because I think you'll find some answers. Because imagine, if you will, we could get it to the point where we understand now what the chemistry was, and if we can replicate all elements that were conducive to the most active things, let's see what we could. But then again, be careful what you wish for, right?
Sure.
You know, what are we opening up? And we've been warned through all these tales of fiction not to do stuff like that.
Right, absolutely. Are you active where you're getting out like every weekend, or how often do you get out?
Usually when I'm making a documentary. So right now I'm in post-production on one, and then the next couple of them deal with different scenarios. But I will approach the actual paranormal again. I mean, they're in the realm of the arcane, but not every single one is about the paranormal. One of them is about killer gators and crocs. I love how it's coming out. It's so different than anything you've seen on any of the channels. And then the third one would be about a cold case murderer called the Phantom Killer, Texas-Arkansas border. And they made some horror films about it years ago and recently. And I have a really unique take on that, my take on it, because I've been reading about it and I've known about it since I was a kid. And I do have another one that I'm planning that is about race car drivers. And the whole idea is that the professional drag racers feel like they become one with the vehicle. What's going to happen in the coming years is that they're going to link into the vehicles themselves and control it with their minds. They'll actually be one with them. And so I want to have, like, midway through the episode, you're going to show the power of what that is, driving a car like that professionally, the power of the vehicle, bring you to the race itself, you know, beautiful cinematography, and then show you what it's like to now what we can predict might happen merging with the vehicle itself. And then speaking with scientists that are developing that technology now, where you're actually controlling a vehicle with your mind. Crazy stuff. But that's the kind of stuff I love exploring. But I will make a special one on a series on Bigfoot. I've been planning it for years. And I went out on a few expeditions and shot in Colorado, Utah, Michigan. And some of that will be on my little web series, because I decided I wanted to do the one I have in mind instead. And I kind of stopped working on that one.
Wow. What, when you you mentioned briefly about the murders, is that something you can talk about? Kind of give a history, and then your
about the Phantom Killer?
Curious, yeah.
Oh yeah, many years ago. You know, it was post-World War II, and there was a Lover's Lane killer in Texarkana, Texas-Arkansas border. And, you know, this guy was murdering people, much like the Zodiac killer. They actually had a lot of similarities to their MO, their modus operandi. And, like, he would approach people at Lover's Lanes. He would destroy teenagers, destroy people parking. And it seems to be the foundation of a lot of those slasher films that were made later. There was one made called The Town That Dreaded Sundown that was actually a depiction of this. But they got close to finding who this person was, but they never found him. He was at large and disappeared. And so my idea, I don't want to give too much away, but my approach to it involves speaking to an incarcerated serial killer, interviewing them, interviewing a psychiatrist, going back to the locations, recreating the murder scenes, and doing a bit of a cold case investigation through the process with some professionals. And a lot of it is style. You know, my style is completely different. My independent style and the one I was able to do with TV is completely different than, you know, the Zach Baggins stuff.
Right.
Like my new documentary, A Haunting We Will Go, the one that's coming out for Halloween, is about hauntings, ghosts, Halloween, horror films, all that nostalgia leading into real life experiences. And it's done in this style where I don't promise you any evidence. Ghost hunters are in the show here and there, and there's a seance, and there's 2 haunted locations, one a haunted mansion, another one a haunted house. And my approach is I don't have any false cliffhangers. I'm not promising you evidence. There's no reason to fake anything because they're fantastic stories. And we did have activity. And let's say in the haunted house, there's some great stories in a haunted mansion. It's the May Stringer house in Brooksville, Florida. Great story, fantastic location. But the house itself that I visited, the separate house, there was a gentleman who, kind of elderly. He lived by himself, recluse, and he slipped and fell in the bathroom one night, maybe 2 nights prior to Halloween. And he smacked his head on the sink, hurt himself, mortally wounded, and he was panicking, delirious, bleeding all over the place. And he expired and died, unfortunately, in the hallway. Now, when the emergency crews got to the house after a while, there was blood all over because he was confused. His head was profusely bleeding, and they thought it was a murder scene when they found him. And unfortunately, the man died very scared. And the family that moved in after started to have experiences. They were hearing things. They were seeing things. They saw him in the mirror one time. You'll hear all these stories in the documentary. And, there was one door that if you close it in the middle of the night, it would just start shaking violently.
Wow.
Now the people in the house, they were reluctant for a while. They didn't tell family members, and they were reluctant at first to even allow me to come in there. They didn't know if they wanted people to know about it. And it's funny to see people in one member of the family in denial of what he experienced, but said, I know I experienced something. I can't tell you what it was. I'm not going to say it's a ghost. Yet he admits how bizarre everything that has happened to him there is, and how consistent people that have experienced this situation. So instead of over sensationalizing it and making stuff up, which I see in a lot of these ghost shows, I did the antithesis of it, and I think you're really going to love it. I'm making it for people like us that just want I call it the ultimate Halloween special, but it's more than that, and it's deeper than that. It's called A Haunting We Will Go. It'll come out this October. It'll be the first thing I've made in that way since Strange World came out in 2019.
Well, I'm looking forward to it for sure. What state are you in?
Right now, I'm in Florida.
In Florida. Okay. All right. Good deal. Good deal. You're quite a bit of ways from us. The only reason I was asking is we have different events coming up and stuff. And
are you in Texas?
We're in Missouri.
Missouri. Okay. Well, I plan to travel wherever I need to go to show and promote A Haunting We Will Go when it's finished. And then it's the second episode that I shot that also needs to go to post-production. It's called, tentatively titled, Monsters Among Us. It will have a different title when I release it, but that's about the Crocs and Gators, and I love making it. It was just fantastic. I still have to shoot some of the recreations, but so each of these adventures are going to be different from the last, very different, but I'll always explore the paranormal in my work. It's just, I was born with it, like many of us were. I love it aesthetically, but I've also had my own experiences. So, just like you, every week I talk about it on my own show, my own podcast. I usually bring a guest in, and it's not always a paranormal show, but often it is,
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think, did Brandy freeze up? Oh.
No, I'm still here. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm still here. I had to do a whole reboot, living in a small town, of course, we're growing, but, it's like we're still 20 years behind.
Yeah,
maybe that's a good thing. I want to visit 20 years ago.
Exactly.
Or 30, 40 years ago would be.
Yeah, but it's terrible when you're trying to live stream. I mean, that's just a big problem.
Yeah, totally understand. So do you have any encounters or anything with like UFO and alien type things?
Okay, well, um, so same apartment in Michigan. Some of this stuff it's hard to go into because it's personal, and it was intertwined with this whole Montauk Project thing. But I'll try to keep it out of context so I don't incriminate anybody. But I had fallen asleep in that apartment one time, and I had a dream that this kind of strange little alien type creature came up to me with this icicle and stuck it into my side. And I woke up with this horrible pain. And ever since then, I have this ghost pain in that area. And so there were some things attached to my experience living in Michigan that were intertwined with the Montauk Project. And I was around people that were an extension of that, some of which claim they were involved in it, and I believe they were running a cult. And so I had challenged that cult at one time, and odd things were happening after that to me. And if you watch the Dark Files, it touches a little bit upon that, but I wouldn't allow anything personal in the show in that sense. So I did have some really terrifying experiences around this group. And I wasn't in it. I was an observer. I was a documentarian, but happened to move to that town because I met someone that may have been around these people. So in terms of seeing a UFO, I never have. I met a lot of people that have and interviewed a lot of people that have, but I never did. And my one experience with a Bigfoot situation was, and you'll see this in, I have a little web series called Between Fiction and Reality. The second episode will be what was my Bigfoot documentary completed, and with some new footage. But I was in northern Michigan in a town called Mayo, Michigan, with a guy named Joe Stewart. And interesting guy, great stories that he had. But he took me out on this little expedition, and he took me to a place called the Field of Screams. And he brought out one of those wooden instruments, the didgeridoo, and he started, and you'll see this in the episode. And, you know, first thing we heard before we got over to this area were coyotes leaving their den. And it was great to hear. It was wild. It was awesome. You know, you're hearing them screaming and barking and doing their thing. And it was like, wow, I've never heard that before. Like, that was so cool. Then things got really quiet, and it was the tail end of deer hunting season. So it was getting cold, and it was, you know, I was open to hear or any of Joe's stories, and I never would make anything up ever. But it was dead quiet, and he was blowing that thing. And he said, now listen. And all of a sudden we start hearing what sounds to be, or sounded like, an owl sound. But it didn't sound exactly like an owl. It sounded like something was making the sound of an owl. Then we heard that same sound in the distance in another area. Now, Joe, and we also heard these, you know, kind of crunches and like thuds. And I said, is that an owl? He's like, nope. He's like, that's a Bigfoot communicating with another Bigfoot. Now, you know, it was not hunters, because all the hunters had gone back. This was dead quiet, like in the middle of nowhere. And there was something big moving, and it could have been a coincidence that maybe there was an owl and a bear or something out there that was moving, but Joe insisted that that's what it was. And I think that's the closest I personally got to, if there was a Sasquatch out there, that's the closest I got to it, was hearing this owl call. And all of this footage I'll put in Between Fiction and Reality. I'm working on so much right now, but I'm going to try and get it out. Obviously, it'll be out before the end of the year for sure. So
I definitely believe that Bigfoot can mimic sounds of, like, you know, owls and things. When Brandy and I had our Bigfoot encounter, we actually heard a frog. Yeah.
I hadn't heard a frog in days, and then yeah, there was a frog. It's like,
yeah, I mean, I believe they exist, of course. And, you know, people are like, well, why don't we see them? Why don't they? Look, one aspect could be that they're unlike us, that they're kind of in and out of reality. That's one perspective. Another perspective is that they're just a lot. Look, the the forest, their senses are so acute, they're so perfect that we're used to all this noise and all this technology. And then we go out into the forest, they see us, smell us, hear us coming miles away. They know when we're going to be there. They know how to retreat. They know where to hide. This is their home. They're never anywhere else. They're also very intelligent. They know how to keep their breeding population down. I mean, these are my ideas on this. And I think if they are of flesh and blood, Diane Fossey took 7 years to find the mountain gorilla. You're not going to find these things by going out and banging pots and pans. They're going to be like, this is funny. I'm going to keep going this way. See ya. I think the way to truly find them is an expedition unlike any other, where it would be a month. Let's say folks like us would be at the base camp doing our thing, interviewing people, telling stories, maybe some local tours through elements, and then hire 2 or 3 really seasoned trackers, like ex-military guys that'll go out there during that month's time. We could have a ton of different shows and interviews and live streams from the base camp. And then you have these trackers that go out and they are out there and they'll report back here and there from what they find, but they're the ones that need to go out. They're the ones that need to wash their scent off. They're the ones that have to be 100% in stealth mode. And we communicate with those guys. I've never seen an expedition like this. And it's got to last. It can't just be a weekend. It's got to go on for a month. It would be the greatest event surrounding something like this ever, because it would go, it'd be like a month-long 24/7 live stream. You could play old Bigfoot movies when some of us are sleeping. You do shifts, different hosts come on in the middle of the night. What a thing that would be. I think it would be sensational. Because that'll be the closest to actually finding something if it's out there,
Or getting it actually on video.
Yeah.
And today, besides, the Patterson film, but
sure,
to get some new evidence, recent evidence. Yeah.
I think that's what we need. We need a long expedition. Like I said, Diane Fossey, these are mountain gorilla, and she took a very long time to find them. And, she had experienced trackers with her. So this is a more elusive creature, probably more intelligent and very much aware of us. I mean, think about what these species, different various pockets of the U.S., at the very least North America, witnessed, and around the world, witnessed our evolution, technological, industrial evolutions, and wars and industry and everything we're doing. They feel like they have no place with us whatsoever, and they consciously retreated, or they're interdimensional and we just don't understand what's going on around us,
Yeah, or a little bit of both.
Yeah.
I was, we were talking about the houses earlier. One of the houses I would be interested in, and just to switch it up a little, we were talking about it earlier, but I was thinking about the house and a haunting in Connecticut.
Oh yeah.
The one where John Zaffis, literally, it scared the hell out of him. And he said the only time he'd ever really been scared. And John said that, and it was interesting.
Hell out of me when I was a kid.
Yeah. Because that house, it was the mortuary in the basement. When my mother had passed away, this isn't a real long story, but it's the guy that worked there at the mortuary. He said that one night he was leaving. He told me and my sister and my wife and, all of us, we were there, brother-in-law, everybody, brother. And he told us a scary story. He told us that when he was leaving one night, he heard music coming from the upstairs. And I didn't even know there was an upstairs there, but apparently there's like a loft up there. And he looks up and he sees something moving in the window, like human shape. And it had red eyes and it was staring at him. And he was down in the alley getting in his car. And he was like, what the hell? And so he just got in his car. And I remember him saying something about the person that he had dealt with that day or whatever was not a good, like they were.
Yeah, there's some dark stuff in that house. So that was a book before it was even the documentary, before it was the movie. It was called In a Dark Place by Ray Garton. And it was based on a true story where he interviewed the family. Ray Garton just passed away. And that I read when it first came out. And I believe it was either late 80s or early 90s. And that is, I don't know if I'd enter that place. I don't think I would go in there. I don't know if I could. because it's just made such an impression on me, and not a good one. Whatever's in there is really bad.
Yeah,
True evil.
really, really bad. Another place that I think would be good to go and explore, I would like to see all of us go do it at some point, would be to go and explore the house, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Of course, we were talking about it last week with Eric Palacios, because Eric, I, and Chris sort of have a weird thing with that house. We all do. And of course, Chris, you wrote the book, South Texas Blues. Folks, go check it out. And you can talk about that. It's pretty interesting. But when I was a kid, I played in that house, and I've heard stories from people who, my dad's friend owned that house at one time, and they swore up and down that it was haunted, and everybody was freaked out. My dad had a little weird thing happen to him there. He didn't really talk about it much, but it freaked him out. Mm-hmm. And so we stayed the night there a couple times. And so Eric's aunt owned it, Eric Palacios from Media Palace, who was the guest last week. And he was talking about how they all woke up outside in the yard, which
it's in a different location than it used to be.
Yeah, that was it. Was now it's like La Frontera Shopping Center,
right?
And right where it was at, there was a place, there was a building that they were tearing down that was literally probably like 50 yards from where the house stood, and I guarded that building. And I had a dream, and like I went to sleep because I had been on post for 2 days and I was exhausted. And I kept telling the people, I don't have anybody to relieve me. I'm tired. Everybody was sick. The H1N1 was going around at that time. And I ended up getting it too, nearly dying. Well, that's another story. But I was sitting there and I was falling asleep. And when I did, I wake up to these pack of dogs running through the parking lot. And at the time, I was dating a girl whose best friend worshipped Hecate, which was the Greek goddess of death.
Oh boy!
And she bragged that she could scare me, and I was like, I don't think you can. I think you're full of crap, whatever. And I just kind of just mockingly told her that. And so this pack of dogs, and when I woke up for a split second, that name was in my head, and I was like, what the hell? But it was weird because it was literally right there across the hill was where that house was, and you could see the hill. And I was sitting there sleeping, and I was like, not for long. I was trying to stay awake, but I was fighting it, and I just had no relief. But I thought that was a weird thing that happened to me when I was there. There were a couple different weird things that happened to me at that place. But that house was extremely haunted.
Yeah, I never heard. I was in the house. I had the best burger I ever had in my life because it's now a restaurant.
Yeah, that's in Kingsland.
Yeah,
there's a restaurant there. Yeah,
but I never heard any of the paranormal tales surrounding it.
Mm-hmm. We should check it out because if you that place is definitely, because I got a guy that broke down in 1979, and he told me, he says, dude, I broke down out there on that county road. It used to be a county road. Now it's a huge intersection, like traffic out the Yang. But back in that, and he goes, dude, the only thing out there was that house.
Interesting.
And he had missing time, which would lend credence to what happened after he heard Eric on the show talking about his aunt's family waking up outside. And this guy says, dude, back in 1979, I had an old Chevy and I broke down, and there it was, that house, and he goes, and then next thing you know, it's like morning. And I'm like, it's a very weird thing. My dad's experience was very weird. Like, he had a dream that somebody ran into the room and tried to like jump on him or something. And he woke up.
Interesting. But
he also he worked for my grandfather, had a little janitorial company after he retired, and they cleaned UT, which UT campus is 40 acres. They call it 40 acres. And he had that whole thing, And so he recruited my dad, who was more interested in selling dope and smoking it rather than working. And so my dad it was a miserable experience. I'm like, I bet it was, because you didn't want to work. But anyway, so he was there doing what he was doing. And he told me that he went into the room where Tobe Hooper and the people they had, it was a UT film students. They were there.
Oh, yeah.
And they had the chainsaw there, and he brought my mom in and they were playing with it. That's and so cool. He comes in and says, hey, what's up, kids? Dad and them were messing with it. Wow. He's like, hey, so my dad just threw it out there. He goes, my friend's uncle actually owns that, because that was at the time. And then he ended up getting it when the uncle passed or whatever. And so Tobe was really cool. Was like, oh, okay, because they were messing with the props. And so my dad you know, when the movie came out, I think that it got in his head or something, you know. So when his friend owned the house, he said he blamed it on the movie and said that's what made him think somebody was jumping on him. But from what I was told, that from Eric and other people, that place was haunted, and there was some weird stuff that went on in that house, because I knew another person that rented it, and they were a bunch of, they were not good people. But I knew this guy, and he was like, hey, you know, my cousin. So I dropped him and his girlfriend off at that house one time back in the late 90s or mid 90s, whatever it was, a long time ago. And I remember just them saying, you want to come in, you know, whatever. And I was like, nah, I'm good, man. I don't want to go in that house, dude. I heard too many things about it. So we were told for years that it was a haunted place. Starscream was on the show one night, and you guys met him. He was my security at the event. And Scream, you know, that was the thing. They would be like, it sat abandoned a lot. And so they were going to try to go in and break in, and they heard some voices or something in there, which could have been squatters, but Round Rock was pretty big about not allowing, you know, so they took off running. So it's kind of a dare. It's like the Moody House in Taylor, where you go and you look, and then you see something, then run away, you know. So yeah,
I live near the Kings Park Mental Institution, the abandoned asylum, and that's notoriously haunted. I've been in that building after it was abandoned with a guy from Canada. We went in there, and he wanted to record some things. And that's, you know, think about it. You know, that's at a time where people were, you know, what were they? The prefrontal lobe lobotomies and cold baths. And if you're going to go in any place, I think a place like that would be full of activity. But I just don't know what you're walking out with. I picked up a hitchhiker when I was 14. And so that's why I'm careful about it. And, you know, for Strange World, I went in a few haunted locations, Silver City, Ghost Town, a few other places. And in that place, I actually had a genuine experience of feeling suffocated.
Really?
Yeah. You know, but I'll never exaggerate how I feel. I'll tell you exactly how I feel. I want to actually experience things, but sometimes I feel like, you know, you have to be careful what you wish for. And I'm sure you've had quite a few of those too.
Well, I was actually choked. I've been choked twice in 2 different locations.
And what happened?
Well, one of them, it was a negative type location. That one, both human spirits. Neither one of them were demonic. They were just nasty human spirits. But the one, I could literally, you could feel the hands around my neck, and then I couldn't breathe. I started coughing, gagging, and another teammate, we were in the upstairs. He had to help me get downstairs, and once I got outside, I was fine.
Did you ever pick up a hitchhiker? Did you ever have anything follow you home?
Knock on wood, I have been lucky, but I'll tell you what, though, I'm a big believer in prayer, and I pray hot and heavy before I go into any location. And knock on wood, I've never brought anything home.
Yeah, I am as well.
A long time.
Yeah, I just thing is, I just after having that experience at 14, and after seeing this guy Mike with the mirror and those things that were speaking to him, the last thing I want is to pick up anybody's demons or whatever the hell they are. Like, I have no interest, and I'm not. It's not that I'm scared. I just don't want that around me. You know, it's like I want to keep my energy level, but I am interested in going to haunted locations. You know,
well, if you're ever in the Missouri area, there's several places that Brandy and I can take you to that aren't bad. You know what I'm saying? There's nothing, you know, on the dark side there. It's just,
hey, and they're free. That's the best kind.
Yeah, I think you'd both love the May Stringer house as well. You'll see it in the documentary, but it's
awesome.
quite a place to visit. I think every night maybe there are Jesse Lisk. He runs the paranormal group that goes in there just about every night, and he has some fantastic EVPs. You know, that I've heard. I mean, some of them are creepy because we love that kind of thing. But I think we're trying to, I guess, like, what do you think is the purpose of it all? Like, we love these stories and we love kind of getting spooked out, but what is it that we're trying to find? Are we trying to find proof of an afterlife?
Maybe.
I think for a lot of people, that's it.
Yeah. And I already believe in an afterlife myself, so I already know it's out there. It's just, I don't know. That's a good question.
Yeah.
I also think that a lot of people are trying to find a way to communicate with their loved ones,
Right.
and know that they're communicating with their loved ones.
Mhm.
I think that's a big deal too.
If you had 100% confidence, well, we've had these insights, but let's say you sat down, full apparition of one of your loved ones that have passed, and there's no denying what you just the experience you just had. Would you feel differently about death, physical death?
Probably.
Yeah. I feel like, I actually have, when my grandma passed, I did see her, and it was like 2 days after she died, and I felt like that was a sign. She was just letting me know that she was okay. She's crossed over the other side. And so, to be honest with you, I'm not afraid to die. I'm not ready to die, but when it's my time, I'm not afraid. And that was a big thing for me to see her, and I look forward to the day when I can be with her and my mom and, my pets that have passed,
I believe we will. I really do. I've seen people in dreams. I saw my grandmother in a dream, and it was her. I have vivid dreams every night, but it was so odd.
Yeah.
I was in this room, and she just showed up, and she was dressed like she used to when she would want to go out shopping or whatever. Yeah. And she's like, I heard you were going to be here. And it was her. I get chills just thinking about it. It gets me emotional, but it's like, it was my grandmother, 100%. I sat down and I spoke to her for a little while, and I was like, wow.
Yeah. Yeah. I totally get it. What about you, Brandy?
I don't.
I only ask because I know you've had a lot of death, around you.
Yeah. For me, it's scary all the way around. I don't think anything, even talking to past loved ones, are going to make that transition any easier. It's still going to be really scary. But I feel that if I could talk to, somebody who has passed and know who I'm talking to, because, we don't really know sometimes. I think that would help, because I'd want to know, are you going to be there? Are you going to, be holding my hand? Or, are you going to show me where I need to go and the things I need to do? And I guess the reassurance that there is this afterlife that is so beautiful that,
See, haunting, we will go. I had someone, Robin Wind. Have you ever had her on Blondes and Booze?
No.
So she's a trance medium, and we had an actual seance where this gentleman who passed away in the house allegedly came through her and spoke through her. So you'll see that moment. And I'll tell her if you ever want to have her on the show.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah, she'd be a great person to talk to, because she believes she can channel the dead and allow them to speak through her. So,
wow.
I mean, however you feel about it, I'm sure you're obviously more open-minded than most people, but there were a variety of personalities in the room, and I would never put anyone, just like you, I won't put anyone in a position to be made fun of, but I wanted to see what each of these personalities felt about the situation and what the results were. You'll see, it was really interesting what was coming out of her, the words and things she was saying.
Yeah.
This was the man who died speaking through her, according to her. So
wow. What are your thoughts, Josh, on the afterlife?
It sucks. I'm kidding. I was reading Brother Heck, and he kind of made me sad. He was talking about his dog. I've had a lot of dogs in my life, a lot of pets. I have a virtual zoo at my house, but one animal in particular stands out. His name was Ivan, and I had him for 16 years. What was different about him was that he protected my life at a time in the period of my life where I was very, I needed that. I had to have, he was a weapon, but he was not just a weapon, but he was also my friend. And after he passed away, he visited me a couple times, and it was so real. I thought it was really happening. I thought I was just there petting my dog, and then I wake up and I'm not. And at one point I was like, my hand was in the air.
Mm-hmm.
And I got so sad. I started crying, bawling my eyes out. Once it really, really struck me. And then another time it didn't. I was just like, I knew it made me feel more at peace. The first time it made me cry. The second time it was like I was at peace. And I think he was just saying goodbye. Now Anthony's had the same thing happen. He had a little weenie dog, a little dachshund named Bowser, and he had a dream that he had come back and he was petting him and whatever. But it was it's a sad thing. I know that they're real, and I've seen my mother had a Chihuahua named Sweet Pea. She was the sweetest little Chihuahua. You know, Chihuahuas are yappy and annoying. She wasn't at all. She was not a barker. All she wanted to do was cuddle, and she just wanted to be the other animals, just to leave her alone and not. She wasn't super social. She had one little friend that she was cool with. The other ones, she was kind of like, "Come on, man," you know. And she liked people, so she just wanted to be in someone's lap and just be held. And me and her got along real good. Yeah. And when she passed, we saw her 2 or 3 times. Like we would see her darting around, and you know. And one time I walked into my room and I saw her sitting on some of my clothes. Like I had thrown, like my wife finally broke me of it, but I would throw my stuff onto this rack that it would just fall, and it would just fall onto the ground. And she's like, "Why do you even bother? Just don't do that." Yeah. And so Sweet Pea would curl up in there, and I saw her one day just sitting there. I said, "Oh," and then I realized like she's been gone for 2 months. So that was kind of shocking. But I think that the afterlife is for everyone. I think animals too. My grandfather had a horse that he claimed that he would see. Every time he would come back from truck driving, that horse would run up to the fence and kind of run around the fence, you know, expectantly, you know, and he would go up to the horse and pet him and everything. And after he had passed away, my grandfather was on the road, and he came back, and the horse was obviously no longer there, but he saw him. Yeah. And then the way the fence was only about 20 feet from their bedroom. And the horse would go out there in the morning, and my grandfather would walk out there to the fence. And he said that he went out there one day because he heard him, and he wasn't there. So, you know, these aren't like scary encounters or anything like that, but it is food for thought, because I believe that our pets travel on too. And I had this really nasty argument with my sister, who said that they don't have souls, that animals don't, you know. And when she lost her dog, Austin, she fought with me vehemently about it, that he didn't have a soul. And I said, and then she saw it one day, but she convinced herself that it was a demon playing a trick on her to try to deceive her into believing that it was. Yeah, that's what these people, they do. They believe that. And I was like, you know what? I'm so sick of this. Right. I don't know. Anyway, I'm eating this. This is not a lollipop or a sucker. This is for my throat. It's a honey thing, whatever, because I'm doing the live after this. So.
Oh, okay, there you go.
Yeah. Well, somebody will make a meme out of me. He was eating a sucker, and he was blah blah blah. No. he was devil worshiping during eating of the sucker.
And talking about,
I mean, at least it's not a stick, and you're not spitting it out in your hand to talk. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's sanitary. That leads me to the next question. I mean, do you believe that? Because some people say, if I ever come back to this earth, they want to come back as an animal. I want to come back as a dog or a horse or a butterfly or whatever. You don't believe in that at all?
Reincarnation?
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's hard to say. Could we choose to come back as something else? Is this one? Okay, so one option of thought that I've entertained is that this right here is a part of a metaphysical game in a way. Mm-hmm. We're from somewhere else. We choose the adventure. And when people say we pass away and all your relatives are waiting for you, could you wake up in this metaphysical game room and they're all like, what did you think? You just went in for another run. Mm-hmm. Okay, maybe I want to go back in and be an eagle. Maybe I want to go, because but it's such a advanced metaphysical game. We come here to learn, whatever we are, angels, whatever we are on the other side, we're coming here to learn, become, you know, this is our avatar on this planet and this existence, and then we go back to this other thing. Mm-hmm. It depends on how you look at it, because all of these, you know, historical and biblical interpretations are somewhat archaic. I mean, they're older interpretations, and now if you have more of a modern interpretation of what we are, is it possible that we're just entering this world consciously beforehand? And that we come in and we're here to learn, and that's why we haven't been able to figure everything else out. And then when we die, or when our bodies die, we have the opportunity to figure out what we did, learn from our mistakes, take it into the next plane or the next level of whatever existence this is. We're questioning it. It's not like we're just hanging in trees, beating each other's heads in, even though some people behave that way. I don't know. None of us have the answers. There's not a chance of it right now.
Yeah. I mean, because, you have those thoughts about people sometimes, especially children. This kills me. Children sometimes are just wise beyond their years. And you're wondering what's going on, because the old wives' tale is they're an old soul, that's an old soul that's come back in. My oldest daughter's like that. I believe she has an old soul that has been to this world many times and is just learning as she goes, to where my son, I think he's a new soul. Like, this is maybe his first go around on in this world.
What is her, you don't have to say it on the air, but if you give me her birth date, I can tell you her life path. And if she's a 7, then that would make sense, because but in particular, 7s and 1s tend to be old souls, and 7s are actually they don't even originate from Earth.
So you say that, Josh, and that totally rings a bell, because I am 11/21/71.
Oh, so are you a 7?
The ones and 7s that you just said, yeah.
11/21, which would be what, 4?
And she's a 6/16.
Yeah. So
July 7th, 1976.
So
you're right in there too.
Yeah, I'm a 7, but what is the birth date again for you, Krista?
11/21/71.
Because 19 plus 71. 1, 2, so you're
a lot
5.
of ones in there.
Yeah, you're 5, but it does make a difference of how many you got. Like, I was born 7/14/1975, so you can see there's a 7 there, and then there's 2 more 7s, which equal 14, then 75, gotcha. And I was born at 7 a.m. So, I mean, it's an odd thing.
Yeah,
I know that my mother had said that I was late. I was supposed to be born like way sooner, but I just didn't want to go. And so when I came out, but I ended up as a 7. But I think everything happens for a reason. I think that's why that things happen the way they do. A lot of people, they don't understand the nature of reality, and they don't try to, or they're willfully ignorant about it. And that's a problem, because they want to preach and proselytize to every damn body else, but they don't want to admit that their situation, whatever. Mm-hmm. If you're going to go that far and believe something so vehemently, then at least see the other side.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I've read books, from the Viet Cong perspective. It doesn't mean that I like them. I don't even respect them. Actually, I can respect some enemies, but I think what they did was pretty underhanded, how they undermined the whole war effort. Mm-hmm. But you have to understand what makes these individuals tick. When you read about the Germans and the Russians during World War II, you get a different perspective on. They're like, well, the Russians were our allies, and you're like, yeah, but damn, dude. I mean, they killed 3 times as many people as the Germans did, and then you're sitting there going like, they were both evil. So you can't sit there and go like, well, these are the good guys, these are the bad guys. No, it was black on black. I mean,
Mao Zedong killed more people than Hitler or Stalin.
He killed more people than and then he killed animals, because if they didn't have any use. And if you read Mao's Red Book, like I've read Mao's Red Book, it doesn't mean I adhere to it, but it is a piece of crap. But whenever I've also read the Book of Mormon. That doesn't make me a Mormon. I've read the Book of Knowledge, that doesn't make me Jehovah's Witness. But I have to understand it. So when they would come to my house, I would have them come in, and I would just argue with them for a couple of hours and aggravate the crap out of them, because I knew everything about their scripture. And then they would be like, wow, how do you know all this? Well, you read. And then, but then when you propose it as a possible theory to anything, then you have some people that latch onto that and they go nuts with it. And then they say, this guy believes in blah, blah, blah. Not necessarily. I'm just proposing that these are theories to postulate on.
Right.
Because if we're not allowed to postulate, we're never going to get to the answers.
Right. Knowledge is power. That's all it is that the more you know. I mean, you can learn from the mistakes and do better. It's common sense, actually.
Sure. Yeah, you should be able to absorb anything. It doesn't mean you have to practice it.
Absolutely.
In terms of the information.
You, Garetano, your birthday, what was it?
July 7th, 1976.
That's right. You're like July 7th. I'm July 14th. Mm-hmm.
And I have
Oh, you're an 8. You're an 8, dude. That's right. An 8 is very eights typically though they say that they have shorter than usual lifespans, but not always. It depends on your and eights have the ability to move back and forth between a 7 and a 9.
doing good so far. Longevity runs in my family.
Well, then you're lucky.
People are living into
But
their
you might have
hundreds.
other numbers too, but the 8 is a moneymaker. 8s will always have money. They don't go broke. So you'll always find a way to make money. It'll always come through for
I've
you.
had plenty of money and I've been broke.
Yeah. Well, you didn't stay broke. That's the thing. You
No,
don't stay broke. And I'm going to say this to people, and they're going to think I'm crazy, but I've already had a bunch of people that this has worked for. And of course, the haters are like, "This, you see this guy, he practices sorcery. He's a Satanist. He's the abomination unto the world and the universe, and he should die." But here's what I do. Right, I tell people right there. There it is. It's in my wallet.
Don't
I
ever
keep it in
use
my
one of
wallet.
these. The lament
You open the
configuration.
box. We came.
Exactly.
I'm telling you, like you put an 8 in your wallet, you won't go broke. I'm just being honest. Bad decisions and everything. You'll get what you need, but you may not have the big pool and the nice car.
I'm gonna catch the big fish any minute now. I'm not worried about the 8 or nothing.
Well, your 8 is what's going to help you because
Reality
that
the way I
is the number
want
of
it,
infinity too.
regardless.
You move in between the numbers you're above and below too. Like Chris, you're a 5, so you're sometimes you're a 4.
I thought it was a 7.
Yeah, and 7, you can move into a 7. 7 can go into 8 too. Just I can be an 8, because I'm attracted to those numbers, 7 and 8. And then my number below me is 6. And all of those are business-minded numbers. So, you come by it honestly, and you can literally look at the numbers. And people say that some kind of, because it's called numerology, they think the ology part makes it some kind of on par with astrology, whatever, or some sort of divination. Look, folks, I'm going to tell you right now, I promise you, this is the truth. Everything is numbers. This matrix that we're living in is built on codes.
Yep.
There are codes. I had a guy, he's a Hopi. He told me, he says, dude, he's a Hopi descended dude. And he said, look, man, he goes, everything is a code. This shape-shifting thing, it's a cheat code. That's all it is. He's like, if you find the code, which tonight, folks, when you go, and this is a plug, yes, when you after the show, go to mine. We're going to do a live stream. I'm going to talk about that because there's somebody who thinks he's found that code. Now, I can tell you this. I don't know, like if everybody that says that they've found this or they found that it's the truth or the absolute whatever, these are people telling you these things. But a lot of it checks out because when you look at the information and how it comes through, everything is numbers. Everything breaks down to numbers. And if you pay attention, numbers really are important. Like Julius Caesar, he's on my shirt here. Veni, Vidi, Vici. I came, I saw, I conquered. Julius Caesar was told not to go to the Senate that day. He was told 3 days in advance and beware the Ides of March. And he said, you know what? Hell be damned. I'm going to the Senate. I don't care about the rumors. And of course, he was stabbed to death. And that was a turning point in not just in Roman history, but in our history, because he was a benign dictator that proved to the people that one man doing good works could change things for the better. He ended the wars, he ended the suffering, and he gave what the nobility had. He made them give a third to the people because they were fat, bloated, parasitic, and rich. And he said there's enough to go around. And it was like the perfect mixture of socialism and fascism, which sounds terrible because the word fascism has been hijacked by the leftists to mean anything that's totalitarian, but that's not true. Now, you get a bad dictator, you have a problem. So it's not something you want to keep, in place. You don't want to sustain it because it can lead to some really bad people like Caligula and Nero. But when him being the first fashionista, basically saying, I'm a benign dictator, but I'm going to do what's right for the people. And he even brought in people that he had fought with in wars, like the Gauls and the Iberian Celts. And he put them and he said, we're going to give them a voice in the Senate. And they were appalled. And of course, Cicero writes about how they had, oh my gosh, they put a Thracian and a Macedonian, and like, you were ruling over these people for 100 years. Don't you think they should have a voice and a say when Romans are living in those provinces? Don't the Dacians have a say? Don't the Gauls have a say? I mean, you're living there. And so it was just common sense, because he said this oppressive regime that we have built cannot sustain itself, because eventually the people are going to rise up and you're going to have a lot more problems. Spartacus was just one of them. That was that, but it was going to happen again and again. So he saw the Roman Republic as a rotting shell that needed to be brought down and rebuilt. He had no plans on it continuing after him. He did not believe. Now, if he would not have been assassinated, think of what would have happened. Same thing with Abraham Lincoln. Now, the South was angry
from that period of Caesar.
Do what?
Any ghost stories outside of mythological discussions?
Well, yeah. I mean, there's stories of Caligula after he died being seen on the Palatine Hill, until finally they went and they did a ceremony, because when he was killed, they just they buried him and they didn't do a ceremony. So when they finally went back and they did a ceremony, burning cinnamon and Palo Santo and all that, then he was no longer seen.
Were there writers back then who wrote ghost stories or accounts of?
Oh, I'm sure. Stories? I mean, most of what we get, is through Shakespeare. But
right.
People like Pliny the Elder and Suetonius. I'm sure they wrote other things too. It's just that we weren't, And of course, the burning of the Library of Alexandria probably destroyed a lot of really cool stuff. I think that what ended up happening, though, like with Abraham Lincoln, it was the worst thing that could have happened for the South to assassinate him. And I believe that the North was behind the assassination, because they wanted a warmonger like Grant in there so they could continue to rape the South and do whatever they wanted and destroy it, and then keep everybody in place. And the last thing they really wanted through Reconstruction, the federal government did not want equality, because the Northerners were not used to living around Africans. They did not want them up north at all. They wanted them to stay in the South, and they wanted to bully the South into reparations that went on and on and on. So a lot of the military bases that are in the South, they're there from the Civil War time, because it was an occupation. They were being occupied at the South. We were being occupied. But killing Lincoln, and I actually wrote a paper about this in college, killing Lincoln was a terrible mistake. And Booth claiming to be, that he was doing it for revenge, that's a lie. He was being paid to do it, or he was being coerced to do it. And then, of course, he paid with his life. But the worst thing they could have done was kill him, because his plan was to bring the South back into the fold and not punish them severely, because he knew that there was going to be a huge backlash. But when he died, you ended up with this drunkard, Ulysses Grant, who was just like full steam ahead. Yeah, let's just rape the South and destroy it and do whatever you want with it, which created a system that bred a prejudice, systemic racism, which ended up being put in place for decades, which would not have happened. I really believe that it would not have happened if they hadn't killed Lincoln. Now, I'm not a Lincoln fan, and I'll tell you why. One reason. I'm not. Because he was a Federalist, and he gave power to the federal government, taking away the power from the states' rights. But once it's over, what's done is done. Killing him served no good purpose, because he was going to fix the system, and his plan was to bring them back into the fold and not punish them, because he knew that it would create resentment and breed more racism. And it did. It really did. And that was
a lot of people from that period that saw activity, not only in the White House, but different places. People have seen Lincoln's ghost, no?
Yeah.
Mary Lincoln Todd has been seen multiple times. So has Lincoln's son.
Wow.
And so has Lincoln, because the Lincoln bedroom, to this day, people claim that if you go and you stay in the Lincoln bedroom, you could possibly run into him or whatever.
Yeah.
Wow.
They say the White House is really haunted.
I
believe it.
Yes, they do.
Yeah.
There's no way it won't be. I mean,
yeah.
Aaron Burr.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at,
Mm-hmm. Boy, I'd love to get in there.
I'd have to have about a week in there, though.
Yeah.
I just have to have a full week in there to see what was exactly going on. Do you believe that they have that president's book
I'm not sure if I know about it. What is it? What did you hear about it?
They say that the president's book is a book that's passed down to each new president, and it has all the questions that we're asking answered are in this book, such as Sasquatch, aliens,
Okay.
more alien stuff, all of the secrets.
If there is something like that, it would have to be more of an initiated. So maybe certain presidents are selected for certain types of knowledge because they're coming and going. But perhaps if they're part of the club, quote unquote, maybe they learn about it.
Freemasons, the
Yeah,
Illuminati versus, yeah,
they,
okay.
they must have a level of knowledge of what's going on. I mean, there's a lot coming out.
I don't
I
think the
mean,
presidents know anything.
yeah, well, they're coming in and out of office, but there could be initiated. In other words, they're part of the clubhouse. They're allowed to know. They've committed to whatever's going on, and obviously, there's something going on behind the scenes, and there seems to be an allegiance of these people, and it's not a particular party either. They're amongst each other. There's some kind of an allegiance happening. I'm not exactly sure if they've been paid off. And there could be a knowledge of what exactly is going down. I can't say exactly what's happening. I just know there's something off, and maybe it
Yeah.
was off for a long time and it's finally being revealed. I'm not sure. I mean, I've heard plenty of this over the years, nearly 20 years of it, of what's going on behind the scenes and corrupt governments. And through these horrible experiments that we have been able to prove happened, these were approved of and paid for, at least in this country, by the U.S. government, or what we know as the U.S. government. I mean, we're the same government that absorbed, the Nazi scientists and brought them here, and the ones that were spared of the Nuremberg trials. So there's certainly a lot of corruption and a lot of things that most people don't know about and don't want to know. They don't want to know. And if they have knowledge, I mean, it might make sense that there's a lot of supernatural things that are going on that are well protected and well concealed, especially craft from other dimensions or other planets or other galaxies. And that maybe we've had this veil over our eyes all this time, and that there are people with that amount of knowledge. But I question people who aren't part of that sect that come out and just say they have this finite knowledge. They just know exactly what it is. We can speculate because there's enough research over the years and enough people that have been in and out of special ops and deep military that come out with stories. And people that doubt things like these government projects are just ignorant. They're completely ignorant. They don't realize that they've already been proven, several of them, at least.
I think you're right, though. I honestly think you're right, because it seems like some presidents know, and then some are clueless.
Sure.
True.
Absolutely clueless.
It depends on where they went and did their initiations. Kate Webster said something. Here's another one. She says, I think the info from the library got moved the night before, like the WTC. It's underneath the Vatican. There is a lot underneath the Vatican. There's you could do a whole show on that. And then I want to. JD Smooth says the White House has a demon.
I wouldn't doubt it.
I know. I think we know which demon he's talking about.
This was kind of funny.
It may have more
one
than
that
one.
poops in front of the Pope. That's what.
Well, Kate Webster says, as if Brandon could even read the book. Let's go.
Oh, he's a very, very frustrating situation we're in.
It sure is.
That was the best comment of the night.
Chris Phoenix, I heard earlier Chris Phoenix was being, I think, a little bit snarky with me. Chris, I want to address you. He says systemic racism, ? Okay. What I was trying to say was that in the South, there was absolutely systemic racism. Obviously, there was slavery. I'm not a liberal. Okay, if that's what you're trying to get, I'm trying to go up here and white knight, or what do you call it, the virtue signal. No, dude. I'm just saying that existed.
Right.
The system fell after the Civil War, but they reinstalled it down in the South by what they did, by virtue of what they did. But then killing Lincoln ensured it, because after Lincoln did his job, and I'm going to say this, and this may be controversial, and I don't mean to bring controversy to the show, but I'm going to say this. there were families that were in charge, that they had him assassinated. Now, you think that it was just some actor that was disgruntled and killed him? You're out of your mind. And look at the strange parallels between him and John F. Kennedy.
Oh, yeah.
The same people, the Illuminati or the elitists, whatever you want to call them, the ruling class, the patricians, go all the way back to the ones that killed Caesar. Literally, the Illuminati trace their lineage to two people who were actually descendants of the murderers of Julius Caesar. Mm-hmm. So the illuminated ones were still doing what they were doing for a long time. Right. And get this, the names like Benedetti and Ferretti and all these with the end with an I, those in particular, those names are actually found in ancient Persia. And Cyrus the Great had a familial, like whatever, and they were called the illuminated ones. And this was from Cyrus the Great's lineage. And when they settled in Italy, there was a region of Italy that they settled in the 3rd century. Now, believe this or not, this is the truth. And then they spawned between them 2 other cliques. Now, one was called what's it called? The Trilateral Commission is what they ended up being called. There were three groups, a 3-headed hydra. One of them were the 6 Jewish families, and then the other one were the Italian families, the Illuminati, and then there was one that was called the Agenda, and that was the middle, whatever, which became the Freemasons. If you don't want to believe it, don't believe it. But, you know, there's a snarky little systemic racism. I mean, I'm not over here championing anybody's cause. I'm telling you what I know. Now, when I go to Rumble, I will educate you all. I cannot do it on YouTube. I cannot say what I want to say, and I cannot mention names on YouTube, but I will say what I know. Now, do you think that there's a reason why these elitists wear that little bloody face on there? I can tell you about that too, and what that means and how far back that goes. I can tell you the whole thing from beginning to end because I've studied it. I've read it. And I've read it in 3 different languages.
The outlaw Cole Younger wrote a book about his experiences and touches a little bit upon what Josh is talking about from his perspective.
Robbing banks.
Confederate soldier too, though. But he says that we had it all wrong in history. And it was a really interesting book. It was from his perspective. He was in the James Younger gang.
Yeah, the James Younger gang.
But before that, he was a Confederate. He was a rebel, right?
The Confederate guerrillas. Yeah. I'm from the Old South, and I don't believe in tearing down statues and changing history and rewriting shit just to please people. I don't believe that at all, and I'm not down with that at all. But I am going to call a spade when something is not correct. I'm not going to sit up here and play around and pretend like that this person that is in the demon that we're talking about in the White House, I don't think this is correct at all. Yeah. And I think he's lifting my pockets, and I don't like it. Okay. I can talk about that all. I'm not going to get political, but we will on Rumble. You watch what I say. Okay. You're going to be shocked because I'm going to come out with. I'm going to tell you exactly what they're doing, and I'm going to give you the agenda. If they don't like it, too bad.
Because I just subscribed to you on Rumble, so I am now on there. So if anybody out there has not gone to Rumble and subscribed to Paranormal Roundtable, do that so we can get the truth. Okay. Yeah,
because there's a lot that needs to be said. There are literally people who have been doing what they're doing and have been in charge of this matrix, but it at one point in time or another, what happens is the leadership gets decapitated. What happens is the old guard gets cut out, and then this new regime comes in, and they just keep doing business as usual. The old king is dead. Long live the king. So things change hands, but it's still business as usual. It's like a mob mentality, like a mafia mentality. Like they're like, well, do we change everything? They're like, no, because if we do, then everybody's going to catch on. So we just keep going like everything is fine, even though this person is gone. Fidel Castro died. Did anything change in Cuba? Not a damn thing. Now his brother's there. And when he dies, some other asshole will get in there and they'll just keep it going because it's beneficial to them. That is what these people do. They just keep going. Now, it doesn't mean that it's not happening. It just means that there's different cutoffs. You know, the military-industrial complex became one of the founder, the bases that they switched to. They went over to. So the original illuminated ones that were from Persia, they no longer exist. They were absorbed into the Eastern Roman Empire and ultimately into the Western Roman Empire, and they took charge. And from there, they infiltrated Christianity through Catholicism. The people, I'm not bashing Catholics. I'm not saying anything. I'm saying that this is what really happened. Orthodoxy is really just like Catholic East. It's Greek, whereas the Roman is Catholic, you know. So, but these people, they got in and they took charge and they did these things, and then they set up the banking system through the Rothschilds, and the Rockefellers took over education. I could go on and tell you exactly step by step what they did and how they did it. I can tell you about LBJ and why he did what he did, how he got away with it, and what he did. LBJ was one of the worst presidents we ever had, and I hate to say it, he's from 40 miles away from me.
Uh-huh.
I mean, I can tell you right now that the whole thing is rotten. They disgraced Nixon. They tricked him. They tricked Nixon. When he said he wasn't a crook, he was being honest. He was really being, he wasn't a bad guy. They tricked him because they shot Kennedy, but they couldn't kill another president that quickly. You know, with what Ford sandwiched in between. They're like, oh, we can't just shoot this guy. And look into Kissinger. Kissinger was one of the worst people who's ever walked this planet. He was horrible. He was a horrible guy. He wasn't just, the foreign affairs dude. No, he did a lot of bad things, and he was involved with Daddy Bush, and they did a lot of things. And it's a timeline. If you look at this and you see they have been destroying and defiling good people for a long time. And whenever someone is trying to get the truth out there, they get attacked by these piranhas, which are just like mindless zombies. They send them at you like an assembly line, and it just keeps coming because their job is to obfuscate and defeat the truth. But like I said, I wore this tonight, you know, I came, I saw, I conquered. That means something to me. They can stab me in the back on the Senate floor all they want. My words are going to live on because it's already there. It's going to be there, and it's going to be on multiple platforms, what I say. So you can kill me on one, you can kill me physically, but you're not going to stop the truth.
You need to get a shirt that says Crom. Conan.
Well, there it is. And on that note, it's time to shut the show off so Josh can get his show on the road. Thanks for everybody coming. And Josh, I did want to touch on something with you that I would like to discuss on a topic of some sort. Is all the bodies being found in Lady Bird Lake?
Yeah, that is actually, I can tell you a whole lot about that. There's a guy, Mr. Black. I need to reach out to him and try to, I have a mutual friend with him, so I'm trying to set something up to where he can maybe come on and we can talk. But he has done a lot of research on it, and I believe that it is a group of people that are doing it.
Oh boy.
Yeah. Well, we need to do, like, maybe you can come on a Friday night with us and discuss that, because it's a short show or something.
Is it on Infamous Minds, or what is it? Or
no, it's our show, just on a Friday night. Just on a Friday night, we'll talk about it. Because it comes on.
I can give you the talking points about it. I haven't gone real deep into it. A couple of my friends have been looking into it. When I was working downtown, there were a lot of things that happened to people. People would go missing like regularly, but I think it was mob related, and that, I know it was. And I would you'd just be like, well, they moved to such and such, and you'd never see him again. Like one guy, they said he moved to Africa, and I was like, okay, is that what we're saying now? This guy just, because there was a lot going on. Downtown was a gangster shithole. Let's be honest, that's what it was. And there were a lot of bad dudes, man. Well, Garetano's been trying to get me to talk about my life story or whatever. He wants to get me thrown in jail. So,
thanks, Chris. Absolutely. Let me just help
Chris
you out.
Chris is part of the Illuminati. He's Italian. I mean, the illuminated ones. He's up there. He's like, so I get this guy to confess to taking everything from the Lindbergh baby to the Chicago fire. And we get him.
Well, when you talk to him, just make sure it's in private and check him for wires.
Yeah. You got to do the whole hug thing. You know that the Italians they would do that. They'd kind of make sure you weren't, that's the whole deal,
Yeah, make sure you weren't carrying and weren't wired. Yeah, absolutely.
Like, why are you wearing a gun? Did you not trust me? They're like, hell no, I don't trust you. This is what we do. We shoot each other.
Well, anyway, thank you, Chris, for coming on tonight. It has been a blast. This has went so quickly, and we'll have to have you on again and talk about other stuff.
Oh, definitely.
I think we're just scratching the surface with you, with all the knowledge you have. So I'm looking forward to seeing you again.
Yeah, Chris,
thanks. Likewise. Thank you for having me.
Yes,
and also, I want to say something about Chris. Chris is one of my friends. He's one of a handful of friends. Him and Barton, of course. They call and text me and check on me regularly, and I appreciate that. They see what I'm going through, and they offer words of encouragement. And I really appreciate that. I appreciate that a lot.
Yep.
So,
True friends are hard to find.
That's
Sure
true.
You're going to be fine.
That's
Just focus on what you do best. Honestly, the rest will just
Yep.
leave it in.
It'll all fall in.
mhm.
Yep, absolutely. And real quick shout outs. I want to thank Spillin' Tea with Spunky Sparky, our buddy Tex, Sugar Britches, BMR, and Nicholas Bravo. Thank you all very much.
Thank you so much.
Definitely appreciate it. And real quick too, says pretty sure Letitia and I saw 2 dogmen today just outside of John.
Yeah,
That
that was interesting.
So that's going to be interesting to talk to Bart about eventually.
Yep. I
You know,
can't wait for
Barton
the
has
story to
been
come out on that.
wanting to see that for a long time. We've been talking about it. And
Yeah.
I actually mentioned, I said, you know, one day me and Nellie were driving down by Turner Farm, and we thought, I don't count it as an experience because it happened so quick, but something was squatted down and it stood up. And for a brief second, and I looked at, and I said it on the show, and I told Nellie, I was like, what was that? Like, and that experience was really close to Phil Balcar's experience, which was not too far from there on another county road. It's in my book. And I thought that looked like it could have been something, you know.
Yeah.
But I told Barton, I said, it's probably going to be one of those where you're driving and you just see it, even though you're out in the LBL all the time. And I mean, it's as good a chance as any,
Yeah.
you know.
Yep.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
It's just it's a weird thing, man.
Right. So,
Chris, you need to get out to
anyway,
the LBL with us, and who knows, maybe we'll capture something out there.
I will.
Oh, I hope so.
For
I'd love
sure.
to
I
have
hope
you
so.
out
to
there.
create some of these expeditions that I was talking about earlier. I really think they're worth doing, and I think you could probably get some backing for several of them. If you plan them for a long enough time, I think they could be such an event, you know. And I'd love to help give advice to them. So if any of these groups, including yourselves, that are willing to start putting these things together that are a little more time spent, for instance, you know, if you had a haunted location or even a Bigfoot expedition or a Dogman thing, that it would take some time. You know, there would be a base camp and all these different activities happening around the base camp. And then you have very particular people on the actual expedition. I don't know. I think it would be fantastic.
Absolutely.
Right. Awesome. Awesome.
Absolutely.
All right, folks,
So
I'm going to run. Thanks for being
Yep.
on, Chris, and Blondes and Booze. See you again next week. I love it. I'm
Yes.
loving the format. I'm loving the show. I love talking
Me
to
too.
Chris and you guys.
Yep.
Just awesome. Thank you.
I'm
We'll
gonna
see
be
you next week,
on my
Josh.
show. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. We'll see you.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
everybody.
All right,
Bye.
I'll see
All
you.
right.
Take